Welcome, my 420 Spot family, and today in the news, top things to know, November 19, 2025. We're diving right in, and believe me, we're starting with a big one. There's a major move happening at the federal level, something from the Department of Justice that has everybody's heads turning. So, we're talking about the Supreme Court, and a case that could fundamentally challenge federal marijuana prohibition as we know it. And get this, the Trump administration's Department of Justice has just decided not to file a brief in this case. Yeah, you heard that right. That's a huge deal. So, to get specific, the U.S. Solicitor General, D. John Sauer, who's a Trump appointee and basically the government's top lawyer in front of the Supreme Court, has told the court, you know what, we're going to sit this one out. By waiving the right to respond, the DOJ is essentially letting this massive challenge go forward without a fight, at least for now. Now, the case at the center of all this is Gonzalez v. Riach from way back in 2005. This was the ruling that gave the federal government the green light to enforce prohibition even in states where cannabis was legal. The thinking was, hey, any local cannabis could potentially trickle into the national market, so it falls under federal control because of the Constitution's Commerce Clause. And now, that entire precedent is up for debate. So, who's picking this fight? It's a group of companies based in Massachusetts. We're talking Canna Provisions, Giassi Cellars, Wiseacre Farm, and Verana Holdings. Their argument is pretty straightforward. The federal government is overstepping its bounds. They're saying the Commerce Clause was never meant to let the feds regulate business that happens completely inside one state's borders. Okay, so while the Justice Department is taking a step back from the courts, another part of the government is jumping in with both feet. Over in Congress, a whole new battle is brewing, and it's all about the future of hemp. This could completely upend an entire industry that was literally just born a few years ago. I mean, talk about whiplash. This slide says it all. In 2018, you have the Farm Bill that legalized hemp and kicked off this billion-dollar market. Fast forward to now, and a new spending bill has a little section tucked inside that would basically ban most of the popular products from that exact same market. It is a total 180. But the fight is far from over. Congresswoman Nancy Mace, a Republican, is not having it. She's pushing a new bill called the American Hemp Protection Act of 2025. And the goal is simple: kill this new ban before it can wreak havoc on the industry next year. And you might be wondering, what's really at stake here? Well, it goes way beyond just the intoxicating stuff. This ban would hit legitimate businesses and tons of consumers. It would make it harder to get full-spectrum CBD products. It could affect CBD for pets. It's a huge deal that would just upend so many lives and businesses. And Dr. Tim Hsu, a veterinarian, really brings home the real-world impact of all this. He argues this whole thing forgets about the patients, and that includes our four-legged friends who rely on these products. He puts it pretty bluntly: as usual, the neediest suffer the most. So all this chaos at the federal level brings us to the political angle, and to a key person who's trying to find a path through all this noise, Senator Cory Booker. He actually thinks there might be a way forward. Look, Senator Booker has always been fighting for full legalization, for full descheduling, but he's signaling a bit of a shift in strategy. He said recently that while, justice is full descheduling, he's at a point where he'll accept any progress over no progress. For him, that's a pretty big change from his past all-or-nothing approach. He really believes that if you strip away all the political theater, there's a common purpose for reform that everyone can get behind. He points to the fact that cannabis is still a Schedule I drug, right up there with heroin. He calls that something that defies all science and reality, and he thinks that obvious absurdity is where everyone can find some common ground. Okay, so while they're debating all this in D.C., the real action is often happening down at the state level. So let's head to Florida, where the fight over a legalization initiative is getting seriously intense. Man, it has been a journey for advocates in Florida. The initiative just barely failed in 2024. Then this year, the pro-marijuana group literally had to sue the DeSantis administration just to get them to move the measure along. But it worked. Just this month after that lawsuit, officials finally gave it the push to the next step. And in Florida, it all comes down to one magic number: 60%. That's the supermajority they need to pass a constitutional amendment. They were so close last time with 56%, which is exactly why the stakes are so incredibly high this time. And if that wasn't dramatic enough, there's another twist. A grand jury is now reportedly looking into the DeSantis administration's role in defeating that 2024 measure, specifically digging into the funding of the opposition. So yeah, this isn't just a policy debate anymore, it's turning into a full-blown political scandal. All right, for our final story, we're going to zoom out a little bit. The whole conversation is getting bigger than just cannabis. Massachusetts is now on the front lines of what could be the next big thing: legal access to psychedelic therapy. Lawmakers there are basically looking at two different ways to do this. On one side, you have a bill that would create a pretty wide open psilocybin access program. And on the other, a bill that proposes a much smaller, much narrower pilot program for stuff like NDMA or ibogaine, and only in licensed medical facilities. Two very different approaches.
And you can really see the range of opinions from the people who testified at a recent hearing. You've got a doctor from Mass General Hospital saying, hey, both bills are meaningful progress. Then you've got a healthcare founder arguing for the super strict medical-only model. And then you have advocates who say, sure, we'll take both, but what we really need is broader decriminalization to keep people safe right now.
And that core argument from the advocates was put so perfectly by Jamie Morey of Mass Healing. She said, criminalization doesn't stop use, it just stops safety. Her whole point is that this isn't about encouraging use. It's about creating a safe and compassionate way to help people who are already suffering. So when you put it all together, you've got federal agencies taking a step back, Congress jumping in, states like Florida having these knockdown, drag-out fights at the ballot box, and then places like Massachusetts exploring whole new frontiers. It really leaves us all with this huge question about where on earth drug policy in America is going next. There you have it, everyone, today's news, and thank you for tuning in to My 420 Spot, and have a great day.